If you've heard about ChatGPT, this is Chat. So we're doing a funny poem about creating queries in Epicor. And of course, we had to have one fail on me. So here's my backup. So this I just created, creating queries in Epicor ERP. I'm not going to read it. You can see it. I'll send you a copy. Don't be afraid to dive in and explore a world of advanced techniques. You'll never be bored. Creating queries in Epicor ERP can be fun and exciting. And with each successful query, you'll feel like you're lightning. How true is that? I'm going to talk about executive dashboards. Just a short, quick background. There's a few people in the room may not know me. I'm a manufacturing processing, and I do application consulting on Epicor. A lot of dashboards, and I've been doing this for now 15 years. Part of that, I've got 30 years in manufacturing experience, so which has helped me working with all kinds of companies. And really, the whole idea is how can you want to set up something that you can consistently analyze the data in your ERP system. We want to look at with this executive dashboard, it's really how can you filter that data? How can you total up the data? How can we group that data? And especially efficiently look at the different aspects of the data quickly. So the problem is that we're going to solve today is we want to look at how you have bookings by customers and sales rep. You know, the sales manager wants to know how is Jimmy doing on his sales versus Mary, or somebody else is saying how's this one customer doing on buying from us. And typically you want to filter it for a date range. And when you're filtering it, you also would probably want to total it. So we're going to be totaling it by total sales, by the customers and sales reps, and by month. And then, but at the end, give you some details that you can just sort of check through and see what's going on with it. The solution, I'm going to talk about UD11. Now that's just a user-defined table that's in Epicor that's standard. You could pick any other user-defined table in the solution when you look at it. But I want to use this for a nice little trick that I have for holding parameters, filters. I want to create a dashboard or BAQ that's going to do some subquerying using that data filter and summarizing it. And also we create some keys for relationships. And then finally, we're going to have a dashboard. There's a lot in here, and I realize I'm going to move fast. I'll try to move slow enough so that you can rewind the recording as required. And in the end, I'm offering that I can send out a copy of the BAQ that you can play with.
Early. And Bill or Bruce, if you need to run over, you're more than welcome to do that into my session that starts after yours. So if you need extra time, don't worry about having to finish on time.
Okay, good. Thanks, Kelvin. So here, let's just kind of bring over the end result. This is a dashboard that I built. That's run on the UD11 table, and in fact, in the training database, I don't have the ability to do updatable BAQs or updatable areas, so I've instead changed this so I have a data filter. So this is sort of a hack way of making it work, but so I have this is the UD11 maintenance table that you can add onto your menu, and it's set up so that my query, when I create a new record in here, it assigns it to a different user. So if I looked at the list, here's my different users that have actually created a record in here. And later on, you'll see this in the query, but I can set then the date that I want to, the date range that I'm looking at. So I can come in here And I could say I want to look from May to June. I can save this. I can come back over here and I hit refresh. And what this is doing is it's going through and it's updating all of my, gotta try one more time. There we go. So we've got begin and end date, but I'm looking at the first and last date. So I'm actually doing a little bit of math here. I'm coming up with customers. And when I select customers, I show a list of customers. And then when I pick a customer over here, it's looking at the customer here. And when I pick month 5 or month 6, it's updating the records down here. Same with sales reps. So when I switch to this, all of a sudden the key field becomes the sales rep, showing the data. This is the end goal. Let's just slide that back up to the up table. So the thing is, there's different ways to filter data. You can have row filters, which trying to do this, yeah, it works, but it's not really repeatable. It's a little clunky. In your query, you can put in required dates, so you could hard code in dates. That typically is not the best form that you want to do. You also have the ability to do dynamic values where it changes based on, like the current data. I can look back 12 months, and I can also look forward, and just using a BAQ constant, I could look forward to the last day of next month for a date range if I wanted to. You can also have parameters. Well, I'll admit that's a little annoying. I've always, because the problem with parameters is now I'm on the dashboard and I want to run it, and it doesn't work well. So the approach that I've taken, and I'm probably doing this more often than not, is using a centralized value. And this centralized value is I've taken the UD11 table and I put it in. I have it showing it like this so I can just maintain it directly if I wanted to. But a lot of times I'll have an updatable BAQ with just this table, but with this criteria. That I'm looking at the current company ID. I'm looking at key one is equal to the user ID. And when I, in fact, here, I'm just going to slide this over and just show you. So when I'm doing this as an updatable record, I have it so that the initial expression is the current company and the current user ID. So if you click new one time, it's going to create a record for you in the UD11 table that will store your data. And consider with UD11, you can not only store dates, but you can store characters and numbers and checkboxes. So it's pretty helpful. When I'm using it, in fact, I have a picture of it in here where it's showing the data filter. But really, I'm doing a subquery, so I don't actually have to show this because this is a subquery, but then I can only look at these. And again, we're going to dig into the actual query that has all of these.
Hey, Bruce, we do have one question.
Sure.
Are executive dashboards available in the Kinetic UI, or are they only in the classic UI?
The short answer is yes, they are available in the Kinetic UI. I am going to show everything in Classic. Some of the things that I just showed you, that sample and how the publish and subscribe works on Kinetic, the Kinetic UI, it does work, but the user interface is definitely different. And I've chosen not to even attempt to go there yet. But the tools that I'm going to show you in the BAQ, those tools are available in the Kinetic BAQ designer also. I've played around with that, but I felt more people are more familiar with the Classic, so that's why I'm sticking with Classic right now.
Thank you.
Now, when you want to total up data, you can always just tell somebody, just export it to Excel and you can create your own pivot tables. You can summarize the columns. You know, you could put a sum at the bottom of a column to say what's the sum. A lot of times, in fact, like here, I'm showing how you can take and connect different, in this case, it might be connecting different queries. Here's one that's totaled it. Here's one that's the details behind it. But the problem with that is sometimes you get the queries and they might run a little bit differently. That example that I showed you, it's all based on one query. It's not multiple queries. I've used one query multiple times. So again, advanced grouping. So this is just a picture of what advanced grouping is doing. Is that here's your details of the sales for the month of May, or the bookings. They didn't sell too much, but it's showing the customer ID and the sales rep. Well, I can total just these sales by the sales rep. And so over here, you can see where I've got 2,100. That's the total of these two. For Nancy Johnson, 1,014. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how Penny Lane snuck in here. I believe she's the second salesperson, and that's why I'm getting some different numbers. But then the other way that I can be totaling this is by customers. So here I've got one, and here's the other. And again, this is coming right from a query. So here I'm showing Addison and Dalton and their totals. And then in here, this is by month. And then I'm doing without the month in there. And then I have the total for the company. And this is allowing me to select a customer, pick a customer here. It shows this data here, and then it shows the details down here. And again, each one of these is using the same query, but it's brought in 4 times into the dashboard. And now I'm going to break out the BAQ and as it's set up. In fact, here I'm just going to show you really quick. If I look at the query, this is built on multiple subqueries. So I'm bringing in UD11, that's my data filter. I'm filtering it based on the company and the current user ID. That way it returns only one row. And then I've also added in, and this is optional, but I've added in some math. So you just have to pick a date in May and pick a date in June, and it will give you back the first date and the last date. And then I also modified the information to a first, the year and the month, so I can utilize that later. The next part for the details, I'm bringing in your order releases and the other information. Again, I've got the state filter off to the side, but again, I really didn't need to put that on the, I put it more just as reference. You'll see that it's not even joined. And in this query, I happen to be looking at the required date, and I'm looking at both the current year, and then I'm also looking at prior year. I just want to say month to month, what were our sales last month? That's the idea behind that. This is where it gets a little confusing, but where I'm talking about current range, I've got some other calculations. But here's the probably the main tip. When you're using this advanced subquery, and it took me a while to figure this out, but this has worked out really slick, is I put in these flags. And so this is we're still in that detail table where we're pulling in the information, and these are just calculated values. In the formula you can see it's an integer and it's just the value of 1. And then the rest is I'm just doing some basic math of what got shipped, what's the price, what's the value shipped for this year, last year, things like that. And I'm looking at some of these for the current value and prior value. And again, I'm just reaching back into that the first date and the required dates, looking at these to compare, you know. So this is the advanced group by clause. In fact, I'm just going to bring in this query again for you. And when I come through here, for those of you that have used this group by capability, this replaces the group by, and it's this waffle or this button down here at the bottom that I'll admit, even in, I think it was in 9, and I always questioned, what was this thing? And finally I figured it out, and so I'm using it a lot. So this is a simple one where maybe I just want to group it by the customer ID and the name, or the rep and the name of the rep. And I would then get those totals. But I want more details. I want to get it by the month and like I showed you before. So you click in that button. And this is a lot of information to take in. So what I was talking about on the grouping set. So in here you have different ways that you can group it, but I'm going to stick with this right now. Is this is where I'm using those flags again. Remember where I had values that I had set to 1. So I'm showing group this by 1, 1. This is also a 1 and a 1. That's pulling in current range. And then it's just using those aggregated fields in the background. This is showing the details, and this is all one long one, but you're going to note that I've got it by salesperson and by customer. Here I'm doing it a total by the subtotal. Needless to say, I'm going to jump over to this next slide, just sort of highlighting these different values. So each one of these is a set of data subtotaled differently. So now that I've set up that query, and in fact, before I get into the dashboard, let's just pull this query over. I got to watch my time here. Is in here the calculated values. This is where I'm doing my aggregation. And here, this is where I'm doing some things, and I won't dig into it too much, but I'm doing some key values. That's how I'm able to publish and subscribe between the different queries. And then here, this is just bringing in the prior month. And then I'm just doing a join on current, prior, so I can pull these two together. Each one would have, the join is a pretty simple one. It's just saying year, month, calculated ID, which is the ID of either the salesperson or the customer. So when I analyze this data, this is what I end up with is, here's in fact, I'm going to scroll over to the right-hand side. When you get over to here, you're going to see all of these flags here: current range, the customer, the salesperson. This is where it's doing that. These are the flags so that I can use these flags in my dashboard. I've got totals, subtotals, details. All of those things play right into the dashboard. On this dashboard, you can see here's the query, but number 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm using it 4 times. And then you can just see where I'm pulling it in. On the Updateable dashboard, I'm able to actually have it set up like this, where you would modify this and it would update the UD11 table with the proper information. How I've done it as a workaround, that's why I have this access link to run the data filter, which is a menu option out on the menus. I'm going to walk through each one of those sections. So here's the type. So I'm publishing the key. I'm also publishing the customer and the salesperson. The type is calculated total equals 1. This is where I'm using, and I made it simple, so you just have to type the number 1 instead of the word total. And then this is the results that you end up getting. It's showing both the customer and the sales rep. The reason I'm doing it this way is now on the next level, which is the sales rep, I'm publishing the sales rep and the calculated ID. The key, this key field, which again, you'll have to look at that BAQ, see how I'm doing the case. And then I'm saying show it as a subtotal. So this is where I'm listing out the different customers or salesperson based on the key value. The monthly bookings, same thing, calculated year month and the key value. Here again, I'm saying subtotal and then the calculated key. So this other key is actually where I'm publishing it. That's going to be used on the other related database or table. So this again is just then showing the month in the customer, or depending on which key is coming from the customer and sales rep view. And then lastly, this is the detail calculated key, and then I'm also filtering it by the month. And then when I pick one, that's what I'll end up with. So this last one, I'm not doing any publishing. This is the key variable that I have in that in the query. And so really what I'm saying is that it puts in both that it's a customer, it's either going to be a customer, or depending on the level, it may end up being the actual customer ID or the calculated sales rep. The calculated sales rep is where I've taken and parsed it out of that tilde delimited field. Again, the components of this solution were the UD11, BAQ, and the dashboard. You know, it's like I said, it's a complex topic. Going to have, there are some things that are in that BAQ that I did not explain here because of the many different things. Take a look at that key field and how I did it. And if you email me, I'll send you a copy. Now, I'm going to try to push it back to 10.2500 just so that you can use it. But right now it's up at on the cloud, so it's at 2022. And so let's see if we can. At this point, I'll open up for questions.
Anybody have any questions about how we went through this? Want him to dig into anything. I'm trying to look and see if anybody's got their hand raised here. Just a second. Tony,
I will. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Tony Centaniello, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you want to bring up your question here.
Yeah, I just got one generic question for Bruce regarding dashboards, and I think it's something that probably a lot of people ask. When you're creating the criteria for the tables, do you choose table criteria or do you use subquery criteria? And how do you know the difference in when to choose?
Okay, so good question. Okay, so for instance, right here, I've got my subquery list. Data filter is one of the subqueries. I'm going to go back to the phrase build. So here I have this table I'm reaching out to, and I'm filtering it within this subquery, saying I only want to see the company and the key value because I'm looking at just this table. But now if I go to the next one, which is this order of release, you're going to see nothing is highlighting here saying that there's a filter on here. Well, what I'm doing is I want to reach back and just in fact, I really don't even need this. I could take that off. I put that there just as a reminder. I have a subquery in there. By doing the subquery here, I don't have to do a join anywhere on here, and I can just pull it in. And so it's available to me throughout this whole query. I could have 3 different subqueries that all relate back to the subquery of the data filter. So here when I'm doing this, I'm saying I want to look at the first date, and I'm making the shipment date is greater than or equal to the first date in the query. That makes sense?
Yeah, could it be a generic generalization that if it's only one table within the screen that you could go with the table criteria, and if it's multiple tables, you want to default to subquery criteria?
Well, it's not necessarily that I have multiple tables.
Okay.
I could have written it directly in here. I chose, but if I did it from here, then I would have to have the table showing as part of the data set in this subquery. But by not having it here, it's still going to run.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
And we've got just a statement from Graham. The example in the documentation uses multiple BAQs, so how you've done this is very, very welcome. Helps him get everything going there. And Dan Ramirez, I see you got your hand up. I'm going to unmute you. Dan, can you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear
Hi,
you
Dan.
now.
Hey, Bruce. Just back to the last question about the subquery. Is there an advantage? So here's an example that I've done before. I'll have a calculated field, and I want to filter by that calculated field. To my understanding, I've kind of got 2 choices there. I can use the subquery criteria, or I can make another subquery and reference the previous one, and then do a table criteria on that. Is there an advantage or performance benefit either way?
Well, here's the advantage, and this is where I've used it a lot of times, is that, and I've had it where I've got, I might have 10 to 15 subqueries. So it's like this monster of a query that I'm dealing with. But by having this data filter parked off to the side, I can come in here, and there's been times that I've come in here and I'm in my testing, I'm able to come in, and I might come in and just, like for first date, I might come in here and just change this to, and comment this out, and then just put in my own date value. so I could, that makes sense. So it allows you that flexibility. And that way you can park this, and I've done it where not only putting it here, but I'll put other values in here. Maybe I had a product group that I wanted to do testing with, and I just focus in on that one product group and write in the BAQ to see that it's working right. And then later I can go back and have that value getting passed from the UD11 table as short character 1 or 2. Because I might call this data. It could be called in any one of these or in all of these subqueries too. That's the benefit of centralizing it. And I'll throw out the other reason. Now, granted, for this dashboard, in fact, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull up the dashboard tool so you can actually see. Here we go. It happens that I'm using the same BAQ, but these could be 5 different BAQs. And the beauty of it, again, that central UD11 table, if all of them are referencing the UD11, now you don't have to answer prompts or do anything else for all of those queries or all of these, because it's all centralized on that one table.
It's really a cool solution to be using the flags like you're doing so that you can get your group sets and keep it down to a single query.
Yeah, and in fact, when I run this one, I'm showing the key fields here too, and that's also part of the trick, is that because if I didn't do the key field, trying to get this publish and subscribe to work properly, so this key field is tied to this key field, and all of these different ones. It worked well. It took a while to figure that part of it out too. But it does make it a lot easier by having those. Go ahead.
Yep, and using the UD table, you're removing any prompts from the user because you're storing those values in that UD table that all the queries then feed off of.
Correct. And it also is really helpful because a lot of times you go into a dashboard, and on a monthly basis, you just want to say, what's the current sales for the month, or what's the current work in the month? Well, every time I open this, I don't have to fill in the value because it's already preset. And it's preset for me, not for everyone. And this is a little bit of a hack on doing this access link, because here that I can go action, and that pulls up this process. Again, I'm doing this because I don't have the ability to do an updatable query on this database. So I just made it this way. So then again, I could take this and push it out to, July or August, save this. And again, when I hit refresh all, it's going to refresh all of these fields. There, it's showing the date changed, the amount changed. And then as I start clicking through, that's when it starts, just working for you. Like here with Tyler, when I pick the August, I'm getting the August data. And when I pick this one, I'm getting the July. And back here to the customer. And this is where it's also really fast, because what I've done here is the way I'm filtering it, and this is where the speed is coming from, is because I pulled back the whole data set, is sitting here and it's getting filtered. Now, each one of these queries that are here in the background, it's holding the complete data set with all of the values, and I'm just filtering it down to, you know, if I open this up and I go to the filter, I'm just saying only show me the ones that have the total with the flag of 1. That's why I'm seeing just these 2 values.
Okay, a couple other things popped up in our questions here. You mentioned that you're going to be sharing the files out. And from Brian Kennedy, he asked, will the version that Bruce shares be an updatable BAQ, or will you be sharing what you have here, which is where you're locked in, you're bringing up that UD and editing it?
I'm going to leave it. The one that I'll be sharing is going to be probably this one. If you're going to be doing this, I'm going to go back to the UD table, because there's really, so this solution has 2 queries. The one is the order, and then this other one, in fact, I broke one of my cardinal rules. Never leave subquery in here. Always name your subqueries, even if it's just one. I can include this. So this one is, you'll have to go in and click the updatable, and I believe you may need to come back in and refresh this, but it appears that it would come over okay. Again, this works. If you're on the cloud, you'll be able to just pick it up and go with it. If you're on 10.2.2 something, again, I'm going to go back to 500 just because I've got access to 500. So I'll push it to 500, and that's what I'll send out. And I'll send it over to Fred so he's got it. And
I can pull it in with the minutes.
I will send, yeah. You still may have to do some work on your own to make it fully workable. So I'm going to get you 90% of the way there.
Okay,
Now,
and
what
then
did you say about your cardinal rule?
Oh, my cardinal, I'm going to go back to my cardinal rule. When you create a subquery, it defaults to say subquery 1, subquery 2, subquery 3, etc. Don't do that. Put in a name right here. Name it what it is, so that when you're looking at the phrase builder, you can tell what in the world is this when I'm dragging different things in the equation. I've seen it so many times where the names are all subquery, and trying to troubleshoot it or work with a customer on it, it's very difficult to. And so just get into the habit. I'm going to say get into the habit of doing that. And honestly, the other habit I have is whenever I create a query, I just automatically share it. And that's just what I've done.
I'd also recommend, if you are multi-company, decide one company that's going to hold your BAQs, because wherever you save that BAQ is where you have to edit it. And that's true for a lot of things, customizations, BPMs, and especially solutions. Because when you save a solution, if it's in a different company, if you try to create that solution with the same name in another company, it will tell you it already exists, but it never comes up when you're searching. So you have to go and find what company it's in, and that can really slow down your development and cause some frustrations.
Yeah, definitely.
You guys are making this way too easy.
We've both beaten our heads against the wall too many times.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a question from Graham again. Would this BAQ work with EDD to simulate cubing?
You know, you could do, in fact, if I take this, so here, just a minute, I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy it quick. XYZ. I'm going to break another rule, which is never do a live demo that you haven't done.
Come on, Bruce, be gutsy.
And so I'm just going to drop some of these. I'm going to make this. The neat thing about this is I do like this capability. If you didn't realize you could do this, is I'm going to go back to the summed details. And so now when I run this query, bad SQL statement, happy bound. You know what?
You might have to move that down lower in your subquery options.
No, you know what? Here's what it's. So however I wrote this, it likes to see this here. Um, um, the old school. Okay, so here I've got my sorting, but what I was going to attempt to show you really quick is that if I come in here and I can change the way that I'm doing my groupings. I'm going to do it like this. I'm in group by cube, and the cube expression is going to pull in it from here. Let's just say total. That's right. I have some commas in here. And pull in, I'm also going to throw in the sales rep name. So what mess I'm going to create here. Okay, yeah, you can see it came back with 10,000 rows. What it just did is it just did a cube with all the possible combinations of sales reps and other things in here. That's why we've got a little bit of a mess. If I come back here, I'm not going to try to make a workable option, but in this advanced query area, you can do a roll up, a cube, and a grouping set. The grouping set, the key thing there is that you can do each one of these is, think of it, I'm just grouping it by this value. When I get into the cubing, and I'm doing this one, I'm saying give me all of the different combinations, which is, there's a lot there. Now, if I change this to a roll up, I may get a smaller group. Yeah, I only got 2,400 records. It's hard to show which one. This is kind of what's going on with the roll-up, where here I've got the months, the customer ID, and then here it's showing the salesperson, the sales rep. So it's taking each one individually, which is, that is probably a key point that I show you, is what it just did. When you've got identical items, or you would want to do a parentheses around this and this, likewise around the sales rep, because you don't want to group it by the rep and the name, or the name. You want to group it around the rep and the name together, or the ID and the customer name. And so by doing that, it's going to clean up your data. So now I'm at 1,700 rows. And so here it's showing here the sales rep, and then just the month, and then the customer alone. So it's one of these things that you got to be curious and get in and play with. That is what I found. Back in the archives, I think it was in June, it may have even been last year, I did just talk about using the advanced grouping.
Yes, we do have that video out there. I don't remember the date right off either, but I think we called it Advanced BAQs with Bruce Larson, or else it covered the advanced grouping. So if you search for that in the YouTube channel, you'll find that pretty easily.
Because documentation that Epicor provides for this section of the query of this tool, it really wasn't all that good. I don't know if there was even anything.
There really isn't. It's kind of sad. Some of these cool things that you can do aren't necessarily documented the best, shall we say.
Right.
But like you said, going in and playing around a little bit, and a lot of it is based off of T-SQL. So a lot of times they're using the T-SQL function. So if you're familiar with how to do it in SQL, you can kind of use that as kind of your compass to try and get it into the advanced queries. If you're not familiar with those functions inside of T-SQL, definitely playing around is the way to learn, it seems like.
Yeah. But I will say I don't know SQL. I'm familiar. I can say I'm familiar with it. When I look at this, I kind of get it. But at the same time, just for the users that are out there, just because you don't know SQL doesn't mean you can't write pretty good queries. Because this tool,
Correct.
honestly, is a great tool. The nice thing I will say about Kinetic, and I've only tried it a couple times, is on the Kinetic BAQ tool, if you create a query, a subquery, you're able to copy one subquery and paste it into another. I think you can even put it into another BAQ, but you definitely can copy them over and over.
And I was able to find that presentation from you, Bruce. It went back all the way to 2020. I did post that in the chat for everyone.
Time flies.
So if you look in the chat, there's a link over to Bruce's previous presentation there. A couple other questions here. I've got one for you, putting you on the spot. You did do one CTE and then your others were inner queries. Is there a reason you didn't do CTEs across the board? Did you have a performance issue or something?
No, I'll be honest with you, is that I picked the CTE because but I couldn't even speak to why except that because I was going to use this across the board. So that's why I'm saying I'm pulling back the data once, but I'm not an expert on really the difference between CTE and inner sub. I know with the CTE, one of the things you can do is you can sort it, which you can then use to your advantage in some areas, but it could have been an inner subquery also.
Okay, just my experience, I try to do mostly CTEs. You do get a performance benefit because it runs the query once and holds those in memory. Whereas if it's an inner subquery and you use it in multiple spots, it reruns that inner subquery. That's why I was wondering if you ran into a performance, if there was some reason that caused you to choose inner versus the CTE. I didn't mean to say you're doing it wrong or anything. You're not. I've just kind of got myself in the habit of trying to use CTEs more than inner subqueries. So I was trying to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple other questions here from Scott. Bruce, that data filter obviously works great if you've deployed the dashboard as a runtime type, sorry. What if you want to deploy the dashboard as an assembly type instead, where regular users will not have access to the underlying queries?
No, actually, the updatable doesn't work in a runtime. You've got to have it as a deployed assembly. If you're pulling up, like if I'm pulling up this dashboard and I'm in a, this is not updatable, but if I have this, the only way that I can make this or use this as an updatable query is as a assembly. And you're right, I prefer not to do the runtime because if somebody does have access to developer, then they could then do anything. You can do a lot of things. In fact, I have hacked through and gotten into some other tables that I needed to by opening up a runtime dashboard, believe it or not.
Thank you. Got a question from Robert Legrand, and I'm not sure I understand. He's asking, can we also get past work files? Do you understand what he's trying to ask there, Bruce? If not, I'll ask Robert to get us some more information there.
Past work files.
Robert, I'm going to unmute you. Yeah, if you unmute yourself, Robert. If you can chime in, Robert, maybe we can get some more information about that.
Basically,
There you are, Robert.
Sorry about that. Like the BAQs and past presentations was kind of what I was referring to. I've not been a part of Upcore very long, and you mentioned you had set up a prior presentation, but was interested.
Gotcha.
Okay. Those honestly, they're in my toolbox somewhere.
That's all available online, Robert. So if you want to watch the video or go to the website and download, Fred's going to send you a link to that. But all of our history for the past 30 years is available online.
Not 30 years. It didn't bring that much over. I'll get you a link over to the eMug website, which has an archive section, and that's got the minutes. And the minutes, when it was a virtual meeting, will have links to the presentations. I'll also give you a link over to the YouTube channel that has all of these presentations. There's playlists for the different virtual meetings that have happened. So you can go into those playlists and see the topics of those meetings, and that might make it easier for you. So I'll get that out to you. I'll put that in chat here in a second. Well, Tanner has a question. Is there a way to use cross-apply or outer apply in the BAQ editor's advanced functionality? And I don't think there is there, Bruce? I haven't been able to get cross-apply, outer apply.
I'm not even familiar with that term. That must be a SQL formula.
It is a SQL. Yeah, it's a SQL function, and I don't believe it's supported in BAQs anywhere. If anybody else has experience in it, I've not been able to get it to work inside of a BAQ.
Now, one thing I will say is that when you're in the calculated fields, you're not limited to just the functions that are over here. there's, I've done standard deviation, for instance, and I know there's a lot of other tricks that you can do, and that's one that you'd have to call on Calvin or Fred to talk about what you can do in the editor for variables.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull the
Okay. Yep.
the links for those other meetings here, get those in the chat. So I think we got Tanner's questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, and I should remind people too, I forgot. If you do have questions for the Stump the Chump session at the end of the day, you can also type those into the question area and we'll put those over into the Stump the Chump. So if you didn't get it to me beforehand, totally fine. We can get you out there. And if you do have other questions for Bruce while we got him, Bruce, are you able to stick around for Stump the Chump or join us again?
I'm going to try to come back in. I'm jumping off for a couple meetings also. So I'm going to have this probably just in the background.
Okay. So we do, we'll probably have you later too then, in case somebody comes up with a question. And if you do have a question for Bruce and he's dropped off the call and not available on the Stump the Chump, go ahead and type it in and I can forward that over to Bruce. We can get that answer included in the minutes perhaps.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and in
If you would go ahead and take a look in the chat. I tried to answer your cross-apply for you in there. Again, that's pretty advanced, so that's why I'll just go ahead and send you the chat rather than go over that.
And Robert, I think I got all the links posted into the general chat. Should have gone out to everybody. There should be a link for the Midwest User Group site, the archive site, or the archive area on that site, and then the Coda Bears YouTube channel. If you go into the playlists section of that YouTube channel, then you'll see the past meetings in there. So, and I try to include those as well in the minutes. So if you don't save them this time, they should come around when you get the minutes. And like I said, the minutes will go out to all attendees of this meeting. Any other questions for Bruce while we still got him? Or is there anything else you want to dig into, Bruce? Because Calvin had let me know he's not, he's got a little bit of spare time on his presentation. He doesn't think he'll fill up his whole slot. So if you do have more, you're welcome to go over a little bit.
No, I'm trying to think of any other tips and tricks that I've got on BAQs that I've done. I will say is that when you are looking at old school, and this is part of some of the BAQs, there was a process when you go to the executive analysis, and it was the executive query. I used to do a lot of these executive queries, and basically it what I have found is that I got away from it just because it's easier, or that you can do what you need to do in those subqueries and using advanced grouping. If you looked at supplier performance, for instance, it's really showing what it does is it does that subtotaling. In fact, here it's not even showing me my mapping sets for this one. Yeah, this doesn't even, not showing it. The executive query is old school. This goes back to Vantage. But the catch with the executive query, you would have to run a process to populate the data. So if you have a really long-running query that does take a long time, I have used this to do the subtotals and totals in a similar fashion. It's just not as user friendly as that advanced grouping that I've done. Definitely that advanced grouping, this advanced grouping has worked out better. You know, I will, you know, because I've got some time here. Let me just, I'm gonna take you over to that. Just clear this. I'm gonna pull up the actual query again. And talk a little bit to that, what I'm doing with the key field, or the, that key field. So this key field, the ID, and the name. This is where I'm, you know, tricking the system in a sense, because what I'm doing is normalizing things so that when I'm pulling in the subtotal on the customers, and you've got that grid view showing the customer. So this is taking care of the key field. Is what am I looking for? Am I looking for the word customer, or am I going to be looking for the customer ID? And based on if it's by the month or by the subtotals or the details, that's where it's going to be showing something different. But with the ID, again, if the sum, the customer and the subtotal are equal, that's where it's saying it's 1 equals 1, then return the customer ID. If it's salesperson month is equal to, or salesperson is equal to the subtotal, then return the sales rep. What that's doing for you is that, again, if I come back to this, you see this ID. Oh, I gotta close that calculated field. When I'm switching from this to this, you're seeing that this key field is changing and the ID is actually changing. Because if you don't do this, then when you can't, it's difficult there. I don't know if it's even possible to do some of the things that you may want to do when you're switching between the different views. Like here, because this is broadcasting this key field of the customer ID, but if I go back to this view, properties of this grid comes back to the key is equal to whatever this calculated field, the calculated ID is. That's back on that calculation that I did on one of the tables, on one of the subqueries. And so it's pulling in customer here, saying show me customers, but also filtered by this ID, because this ID column, you'll see how when I switch to sales rep, I still have an ID and a name. And that's where I'm doing the magic.
That's a really clever solution to it.
Yeah, I forget how that hit me. I was just saying, because I was trying to figure out how to do this. And yeah, it's amazing what you can do with a case statement and with the grouping. And it's back to where you just have to, sometimes, now I've come in here. In fact, I'm going to pull this up. And you end up pulling the data into Excel, and you start playing around with it, saying, okay, how do I want to make this work? So over here, you can see the key, the ID, and the name, and how I'm pushing that based on those other tables right here. You can see where I have a 1 or a blank, and that's how it's determining which I should do. So like here, I've said salesperson. So therefore, it's going to put in salesperson and sales rep. So I can talk between the different tables.
Awesome.
So,
Do we have
okay.
a question? Andres Schulte, is this a good way to do a supplier scorecard? We'd like to calculate and score performance monthly. It'd be nice to do it automatically, not via reports, Excel, and DMT. It looks like
This is, I have done supplier scorecards this way, and mainly because the scorecard that Epicor ships with the product is a bad scorecard. Not that I have an opinion on it, but when you look at supplier performance in here, it gives you the count, not the percent on-time delivery. So if a supplier had 3 late deliveries, is that good or bad, or 30 late deliveries? You want to know, is it 30%, 50%, or 60% on-time delivery? You would be able to do using the model that I presented to you, go out to your receive table, and you would be able to come up with an on-time performance. And my recommendation is, I've done it where I would look at both promise date and I also look at the due date, because the due date is the one that you want to keep current as the supplier keeps moving the dates on you, so you know what's happening. But the promise date is when they said they promise. So you can score them 2 different ways.
awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Well, we still got Bruce here. I know we went a little bit over, but like I said, Calvin thought he might have some spare time anyway. So before we switch over to him, we'll deal with any last minute questions. And Tina, I do see your question for Stump the Chump. We'll get that added in at the end.
Yep, I have messaged her directly.
Okay, so you've already
Sorry.
got that added. Nope.
Yep, and I fixed her typo.
I'll get that out of our question list then. Anyone else, any questions for, oh, here we go. Kevin, how do you use aggregate functions with the advanced grouping?
Oh, okay, here, let's do this.
And for those who don't know, aggregate functions would be things like sum, average, min, max, those types of things.
We're just going to do order piece, and I'm just going to do a quick query here, and I'm just going to hard code in my fields, just a required date. Let's say 5:30. And I'm picking this just so it's a smaller data set. Back here, I'm going to push this out to June. There we go. And then let's do a quick customer ID, name. No, we're just going to do counts. And then I could say I want a quantity parts. Integer. Here's my aggregate. And nice trick is I can just do a count like this. I'm just doing this. I could come in and select, actually, if we want technically that, and then integer, count, asterisk, back here because we might have decimals. Okay, so those are my two aggregates, and then I could do grouping like this. In fact, I'm also going to add in state. And this is just getting me, this did the total group. But now I want to see, what about with, here's the differences. Now if I come back in here, instead I'm going to get rid of this group by. Key thing, remember to click new over here. I've done this where I've got these all done and I forgot to click new, so everything I did lost. So you'll note that I've got a new group here, and I'm going to do customer ID, comma name, comma. Now, another grouping is going to be state. So if you kind of see so I've got two different groups that I'm going to group on now. So now when I analyze it, so here I'm totaling it by Minnesota and Wisconsin, and here I'm totaling it by customer. I made this rate. I pushed this out to push it out to everything. Now let's analyze it. So here you can see where I'm grouping. So I'm grouping it by the state, getting the totals, and here I'm getting the totals by the customer. And then if I wanted to say, well, I want to know which customers are in which state, and then and you'll note that I don't have those other flags in place, but I'm just going to copy all of this. Enter, put parentheses. And now and then I'm going to add one more parentheses. Then I'm saying for where all of these are the same, so I'm saying the customer name and the states all in one bucket. That's going to be the grouping, so I'm going to end up with third type of grouping. So instead of 47 rows, I did like something. Oh, it's right here.
Do you have an extra starting paren on the customer.cust ID? Yeah, on that line.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna drop all of these. I'll try it that way. There we go. So if I sort it by customer, so you can see where grouping it, or if I did it by state and province now, and really what that does for me is I can see what's the total in California, but then who's the customers in California. So it's just doing the simple math. And just to give you another flavor of how making some changes here, if again, I'm going to get rid of this, and change this group by to a roll up. Run it like that. But here I'm getting customer ID and to how these are. I'm getting one for this and this by changing this so that I'm bracketing my customer and the name together. When I analyzed it. So now it's giving me all it's the role I'm trying to see if I can show the difference here. I'm going to do the cube on this now. I was trying to just do all possible combinations between the different ones on cubing it. And somebody asked if you could drive this out to EDD or your Kinetic homepage. I think you could. The only catch is I don't know about how if you can. I don't believe you can do filtering on the EDD unless you drill into it and then do your filtering.
Anything else for Bruce while we still got him? All right. Well, thank you, sir. I do appreciate you taking the time. Learned a lot of cool things about the advanced grouping, and the solution for the dashboard was really cool.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah. No, I'll get that information out to you, Fred, and so we can try it out. You're on. Good luck.